Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our buddy read of Mr. Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope. I've been reading this book out loud to you with copious editorial interruptions, and we are wrapping the book up. We are coming to the end. With Trollope, that doesn't happen as it does in contemporary fiction, where he just stops in mid-sentence when the cocaine runs out. Instead, he wraps up his book good and properly. He starts the falling action of wrapping up the plot lines and saying goodbye to the characters a leisurely space of time before the last page of the book. Mr. Scarborough's Family is different from many other of his books in that it has a sting at the tail. It has one last plot twist that we've already seen. But now the question is really, how are you going to dispose of all these various plot lines? And today, this chapter we're reading is one that we all knew was coming. I don't think by this point in the book there's a single reader who's reading along with me who wants this chapter to happen. But nevertheless, in the Trollope novel, you're going to get it. And this chapter is called Mr. Scarborough's Death. It is a melancholy fact that Mr. Barry, when he heard the last story from Tretton, began to think that his partner was not so wide awake as he hath hitherto always regarded him. Mr. Barry is Mr. Gray's partner in the law firm that represents Mr. Scarborough, and Mr. Gray has now been hoodwinked twice. He saw the documents that said that Montjoy Scarborough was illegitimate. He sent Mr. Barry across the continent to verify them. He verified them to the full extent of his legal acumen, and they were wrong. And now there's a second set. And we've already learned that Mr. Gray considers it, probably rightly, as the end of his career as a lawyer. No one will. People will either think that he was in on the grandest swindle of the generation, or he'll think that he's so stupid that any client can pull any trick on him. And Mr. Barry, we are being told here, is now seeing that. As time runs on, such a result will generally take place in all close connections between the old and the young. Here's Trollope again, just like in the last chapter, talking about relationships between the old and the young. Little, very quiet reminder that he himself was in the last year, in the last months of his life when he wrote this. I think that might also inform some of the tenor of how long Mr. Scarborough sticks around in this book. 10 years ago, Mr. Barry had looked up to Mr. Gray with a trustful respect. Words which fell from Mr. Gray were certainly words of truth, but they were, in Mr. Barry's then estimation, words of wisdom also. Gradually, an altered feeling had grown up, and Mr. Barry thought, though he did not doubt the truth, thought less about it. But he did not doubt the wisdom constantly. But he did doubt the wisdom constantly. The wisdom practiced under Mr. Barry's vice management was not quite the same as Mr. Gray's, and Mr. Barry had come to understand that though it might be well to tell the truth on occasions, it was folly to suppose that anyone else would do so. He had always thought that Mr. Gray had gone a little too fast in believing Squire Scarborough's first story. "But you've been to Nice yourself and discovered that it is true," Mr. Gray would say. Mr. Barry would shake his head and declare that in having to deal with a man of such varied intellect as Mr. Scarborough, there was no coming to the bottom of a story. But there had been then no question of any alterations in the mode of conducting business at the firm. Mr. Gray had been, of course, the partner by whose judgment any question of importance must ultimately be decided. And though Mr. Barry had been sent to Nice, the Scarborough property had been especially in Mr. Gray's branch. He had been loud in declaring the iniquity of his client, but had altogether made up his mind that the iniquity had been practiced, and all the clerks in the office had gone with him, trusting to his great character for sober sagacity, which might have a lot to do with his daughter. And Mr. Gray was not a man who would easily be put out of his high position. The respect generally felt for him was too high, and he carried himself before his partner and clerks too powerfully to lose at once his prestige. But Mr. Barry, when he heard the new story, looked at his own favorite clerk and almost winked an eye. And when he came to discuss the matter with Mr. Gray, he declined even to pretend to be led at once by Mr. Gray's opinion. A gentleman who has been so very clever on one occasion may be very clever on another. That had been his argument. Mr. Gray's reply had simply been to the effect that you cannot twice catch an old bird with chaff. No notation on that. It was a saying. You'll have to look it up. Mr. Barry seemed, however, to think in discussing the matter with the favorite clerk that the older the bird became, the more often he could be caught with chaff. Mr. Gray in these days was very unhappy, not made so simply by the iniquity of his client, but by the insight which he got into his partner's aptitude for business. He began to have his doubts about Mr. Barry. Mr. Barry was tending towards sharp practice. Mr. Barry was beginning to love his clients, not with the proper attorney's affection as his children, but as sheep to be shorn. With Mr. Gray, the bills had gone out and had been no doubt paid, and the money had in some shape found its way into Mr. Gray's pockets, but he had never looked at the two things together. Mr. Barry seemed to be thinking of the wool as every client came in, or was dismissed. Mr. Gray, as he thought these things, began to fancy that his own style of business was becoming antiquated. This is a theme. It crops up in Trollope quite a bit, not only with lawyers, but also especially with doctors. He had said good words of Mr. Barry to his daughter, but just at this period his faith in both himself and his partner began to fail. His partner was becoming too strong for him, and he felt that he was failing. Things were changed, and he did not love his business as he used to do. He had fancies, and he knew that he had fancies, and that fancies were not good for an attorney. When he saw that what was in Mr. Barry's mind as to this new story from Tretton, he became convinced that Dolly was right. Dolly was not fit, he thought, to be Mr. Barry's wife. She might have been the wife of such another as himself, had the partner been such another, but it was not probable that any partner should have been such as he was. Old times are changed, he said to himself, old manners gone. Then he determined that he would put his house in order and leave the firm. A man cannot leave his work forever without some touch of melancholy. But it was necessary that someone should go to Rummelsburg and find what could be learned there. Mr. Gray had sworn that he would have nothing to do with the news story, as soon as the news story had been told to him, but it soon became apparent to him that he must have something to do with it. As soon as the breath should be out of the old squire's body, someone must take possession of Tretton, and Mountjoy would be left in the house. In accordance with Mr. Gray's theory, Augustus would be the proper possessor. Augustus no doubt would go down and claim the ownership, unless the matter could be decided to the satisfaction of both beforehand. Mr. Gray thought that there was very little hope of such satisfaction, but it would of course be for him and his firm to see what could be done. That I shouldn't ever have got to such a piece of business, he said to himself, but it was at last settled among them that Mr. Barry should go to Rummelsburg. He had made the inquiry at Nice, and he would go on with it at Rummelsburg. Mr. Barry started with Mr. Quaverdale at St. John's, the gentleman whom Harry Ainsley had consulted as to the practicability of his earning money by writing for the press. We haven't seen Mr. Quaverdale in quite some time. Mr. Quaverdale was supposed to be a German scholar, and therefore had his expenses paid for him with some bonus for his time. A conversation between Mr. Barry and Mr. Quaverdale, which took place on their way home, shall be given as is the best to describe the results of their inquiry. This inquiry had been conducted by Mr. Barry's intelligence, but had owed so much to Mr. Quaverdale's extensive knowledge of languages that the two gentlemen may be said, as they came home, to be equally instructed in the affairs of Mr. Scarborough's property. "He has been too many for the governor," said Barry. Mr. Barry's governor was Mr. Gray. "It seems to me that Mr. Scarborough is a gentleman who is apt to be too many for most men. The sharpest fellow I ever came across, either in the way of a cheat or in any other walk of life. If he wanted anyone else to have the property, he'd come out with something to show that the entail itself was all moonshine. But when he married again at Nice, he couldn't have quarrelled with his eldest son already. The child was not above 4 or 5 months old." This came from Mr. Quaverdale. "It's my impression," said Barry, "that it was then his intention to divide the property, and that this was done as a kind of protest against primogeniture. Then he found that would fail, that if he came to explain the whole matter to his sons, they would not consent to be guided by him and to accept a division. But what I have seen of both of them, they are bad to guide after that fashion. Then Mountjoy got frightfully into the hands of the moneylenders, and in order to do to them, it became necessary that the whole property should go to Augustus." "They must look upon him as a nice sort of old man," said Quaverdale. "Rather. But they have never met him to speak a bit of their mind to him. And then how clever he was in getting round his own younger son. The property got into such a condition that there was money enough to pay the Jews the money they had really lent. Augustus, who was never quite sure of his father, thought it would be best to disarm them, and he consented to pay them, getting back all their bonds. But he was very uncivil to the squire, told him that the sooner he died the better, or something like that, and then the squire immediately turned round and sprang this Rummelsburg marriage upon us, and left every stick of the place to Mountjoy. It must all go to Mountjoy, every acre, every horse, every bed, every book. And these, in 12 months' time, will have been divided among the card players of the metropolis," said Quaverdale. "We've got nothing to do with that. If ever a man did have a lesson, he has had it. If he chose to take it, no man would ever have been saved in so miraculous a manner. That's absolutely true. If Montjoy weren't a gambling addict, if he weren't hopeless, addicts are hopeless. If he weren't hopeless, then he would see that he's been given the lesson of a lifetime. He ought to do what he said in a couple of chapters ago. If you're going to inherit Tretton Park, manage it, live there, enjoy it, and don't gamble anymore. But there can be no doubt that John Scarborough and Ada Sneyd were married at Rummelsburg, and that it will be found to be impossible to unmarry them. Well, at last we know Mr. Scarborough's wife's first name. 562 pages. Old Mrs. Sneyd, the lady's mother, was then present, said Quaverdale. Not a doubt about it. And that Fritz Deutschmann was present at the marriage. I almost think that we ought to have brought him away with us. It could have cost a couple of £100, but the estate can bear it. We have him by sending for him if we should want it. Then, after many more words on the subject, and to the same effect, Mr. Barry went on to give his own private opinions. In fact, the only blemish in old Scarborough's plans was this, that the Rummelsburg marriage was sure to come out sooner or later. Do you think so? Fritz Deutschmann is the only party alive. It's not probable that he would ever have heard of Tretton. That was Mr. Scarborough's big plan. Remember, he told us he went looking for a place like Rummelsburg. It wasn't happenstance. He went looking for somewhere so out of the way that no one would ever think about it. These things always do come out, says Mr. Barry. But it does not signify now. And the world will know how godless and reprobate old Scarborough has been, but that will not interfere with Montjoy's legitimacy. And the world has pretty much understood already that the old man has cared nothing for God or man. It was bad enough, according to the other story, that he should have kept Augustus so long in the dark and determined to give it all to a bastard by means of a plot and a fraud. The world has got used to that. The world will simply be amused by this other turn. And as the world generally is not very fond of Augustus Scarborough and entertains a sort of good-natured pity for Montjoy, the first marriage will be easily accepted. There'll be a lawsuit, said Quaverdale. I don't see that they'll have a leg to stand on. When the old man dies, the property will be exactly as it would have been. This latter intended fraud in favor of Augustus will be understood as having been old Scarborough's farce. The Jews, that is, the moneylenders, are the party who have really suffered. And Augustus? He will have lost nothing by which he was, by law, entitled. His father might, of course, make that what will he pleased. If Augustus was uncivil to his father could, of course, alter his will. The world would see all that. But the world would be inclined to say that these poor moneylenders have been awfully swindled. The world won't pity them. I'm not so sure. It's a hard case to get a hold of a lot of men and force them to lend you £100,000 without security and without interest. That's what has been done in this case. They'll have no means of recovering anything. Not a shilling. The wonder is that they should have got the £100,000. They never would have had it unless the squire had wished to pave the way back for Montjoy. And then he made Augustus do it for him. In my mind, he has been so clever that he ought to be forgiven all his rascality. There had been, too, no punishment for him, and no probability of punishment. He has done nothing for which the law can touch him. He has proposed to cheat people, but before he would have cheated them, he might be dead. The moneylenders will have been swindled awfully, but they have never had any grounds of tangible complaint against him. Who are you? He has said. I don't know you. They alleged that they had lent their money to his eldest son. Well, that's as you thought, he replied. I ain't bound to come and tell you all the family arrangements about my marriage. If you look at it all round, it was uncommonly well done. Notice what you're hearing here. Mr. Barry is admiring the swindle. He's admiring the sheep shearing, as we've already heard it called. When Mr. Barry got back, he found that it was generally admitted that at the chambers that the business had been well done. Everybody was prepared to allow that Mr. Scarborough had not left a screw loose in the arrangement, though he was this moment on his deathbed and had been under surgical tortures and operations, and in fact slowly dying during the whole period in which he had been this busy. Everyone concerned in the matter seemed to admire Mr. Scarborough, except Mr. Grey, whose anger, either with himself or his client, became the stronger the louder grew the admiration of the world. A couple of barristers very learned in law were consulted, and they gave it as their opinion that from the evidence as shown to them there could be no doubt but that Montjoy was legitimate. There was no reason in the least for doubting it, but for that strange episode which had occurred when, in order to get the better of the law, Mr. Scarborough had declared at the time Montjoy's birth he had not been married. They went on to declare that on the squire's death the Rummelsburg marriage must of course have been discovered, and had given it as their opinion that the squire had never dreamed of doing so great an injustice either to his elder or his younger son. He had simply denied, as they thought, to cheat the moneylenders, and had cheated them beautifully. That Mr. Tyrwhitt, that's one of the moneylenders, the foremost one, should have been so very soft was a marvel to them, but it only showed how very foolish a sharp man of the world might be when he encountered one sharper. And Augustus, through an attorney acting on his own behalf, consulted 2 other barristers, whose joint opinion was not forthcoming quite at once, but may have to be stated. Augustus was declared by them to have received at his father's hands a most irreparable injury, to such an extent that an action for damages would in their opinion lie. He had accepted his father's first story, altered the whole course of his life, abandoned his profession, and even paid large sums of money out of his own pocket for the maintenance of his elder brother. A jury would probably award him some very considerable sum, if a jury could get hold of his father while still living. No doubt the furniture and other property would remain and might be held to be liable for the present owner's laches, but those 2 learned lawyers did not think that an action could be taken with any probability of success against the eldest son, with reference to his tables and chairs, when the Tretton estates should have become his. As these learned lawyers had learned that old Mr. Scarborough was at this moment almost at the point of death, would it not be better that Augustus should apply to his elder brother to make him some compensation, as the peculiarities of the case would demand? Probably best not to go to law, probably best just to ask Montjoy for something out of the estate, which is, well, you'll see. But as this opinion did not reach Augustus till his father was dead, the first alternative proposed was of no use. "I suppose, sir, we had better communicate with Mr. Scarborough," Mr. Barry said to his partner on his return. "Not in my name," Mr. Gray replied. "I've put Mr. Scarborough in such a state that he is not allowed to see any business letter. Sir William Broderick is there now, but communications were made both to Montjoy and to Augustus. There was nothing for Montjoy to do. His case was in Mr. Barry's hands, nor could he take any steps till something should be done to oust him from Tretton. Augustus, however, immediately went to work and employed his counsel, learned in the law. "You will do something, I suppose, for poor Gus?" the old man said to his son one morning. It was the last morning on which he was destined to awake in the world, and he had been told by Sir William and Mr. Merton that it would probably be so. But death to him had no terror. Life to him, for many weeks past, had been so laden with pain as to make him look forward to the release from it with hope. But the business of life had pressed so hard upon him as to make him feel that he could not tell what had been accomplished. The adjustment of such a property as Tretton required, he thought, his presence. Until it had been adjusted, he clung to life with a pertinacity which had seemed to be oppressive. Now Montjoy's debts had been paid, and Montjoy could be left a bit happier. Having achieved so much, he was delighted to think that he might. But there had come latterly a claim upon him equally strong, that he should wreak his vengeance upon Augustus. Had Augustus abused him for keeping him in the dark so long, he would have borne it patiently. He had expected as much. But his son had ridiculed him, laughed at him, made nothing of him, and had at last told him to die out of the way. He would, at any rate, do something before he died. He had had his revenge, very bitter of its kind. Augustus should be made to feel that he had been ridiculous, not to be laughed at that he had not been ridiculous, not to be laughed at in his last days. He had ruined his son, inevitably ruined him, and was about to leave him penniless upon the earth. But now, in his last moments, in his very last, there came upon him some feeling of pity, in which his eldest son we once more called Gus. A little bit confusing here. Augustus Scarborough was a lawyer. He has a trade. He won't be penniless upon the earth, unless all the law firms of London hate him, as much as everyone else does. "I don't know what it will be, sir, but if the property is to be mine—" "It will be yours. It must be yours." "Then I will do anything for him that he will accept." "Do not let him starve, or have to earn his bread." "Say what you wish, sir, and it shall be done, as far as I can do it." "Make him an offer of some income, and settle it on him. Do it at once." The old man, as he said this, was thinking probably the greater danger that all Tretton might before long be made to vanish. He's urging Montjoy to set a sum from the estate on Augustus right away, and he's not doing it because it's the right thing to do. He's doing it because he fears that Montjoy is going to gamble the whole estate away. And Montjoy, "Sir, you have gambled surely enough for amusement. With such a property as this in your hand, gambling becomes very serious." They were the last words, the last intelligible words, which the old man spoke. He died with his left hand on his son's neck, and Merton and his sister by his side. It was a deathbed not without its lesson, not without a certain charm in the eyes of some fancied beholder. Those who were there seemed to love him well, and should do so. He had contrived, in spite of his great faults, to create a respect in the minds of those around him which is itself a great element of love. But there was something in his manner which told of love for others. He was one who could hate to distraction, and on whom no bonds of blood would operate to mitigate his hatred. He would persevere to injure it with a terrible pertinacity. And yet, every phase of his life he had been actuated by love for others. He had never been selfish, thinking always of others rather than himself. Supremely indifferent he had been to the opinion of the world around him, but he had never run counter to his own conscience. From the conventionalities of the law he entertained a supreme contempt, but he did wish so to arrange matters with which he was himself concerned, so that to do what justice demanded. Whether he succeeded in the last year of his life, the reader may judge. But certainly the three persons who were assembled around his deathbed did respect him, and had been made to love him by what he had done. Merton wrote the next morning to his friend Harry Ainsley respecting the scene. Quote, "The poor old boy has gone at last. In spite of all his faults, I feel as though I have lost an old friend. To me he had been most kind, and I did not know all of his sins, and did I not know all of his sins, I should say that he had been always loyal and always charitable. Mr. Gray condemns him, and all the world must condemn him. One cannot make an apology for him without being ready to throw all truth and all morality to the dogs. But if you can imagine for yourself a state of things in which neither truth nor morality shall be thought essential, then old Mr. Scarborough would be your hero. He was the bravest man I ever knew. He was ready to look all opposition in the face and prepared to bear it down. And whatever he did with the view of accomplishing what he thought to be right for other people. Between him and his God I cannot judge, but he believed in an almighty one, and certainly went forth to meet him without a fear in his heart." So that's it for Mr. Scarborough. He ends his life by urging his son to do something for his other son, even though his eldest son and he himself hate the younger son. Still thinking about other people. And there's no doubt in the mind that letter from Mr. Merton is Trollope's estimation. I don't think there's much doubt of that. So there you have it. That is the end of Mr. Scarborough. The book continues. The book continues for a while longer. But that's the end of Mr. Scarborough. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.